Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at just 3 letters, SEN.
Right.
And it's kind of amazing how much ground those letters cover depending on the context.
It really is. We've got sources touching on education, sound design, even space travel.
Exactly. We've got a policy briefing, an article on talking to parents, a conceptual look at SEN itself, info on a studio called SEN Sound, and then news about SEN, the space video company.
Quite the mix.
So our mission today is basically to unpack these different meanings. And I think, given how common it is there, we should probably start with the educational context.
Makes sense. That's definitely where most people probably encounter SEN first. It stands for Special Educational Needs.
Okay.
And this policy briefing we have from the California Teachers Association, it jumps right in, defining SEN in terms of students with exceptional needs.
Exceptional needs. Okay, that feels a bit broad. How does the briefing narrow that down? What does that look like in practice?
Well, it gets more specific. It talks about needing appropriate placement based on the student's individualized educational program, the IEP.
Right, the IEP.
And what's interesting is that it really stresses this belief that many students with disabilities can actually do well, can thrive in regular classrooms.
So inclusion is a big theme there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Which leads into this idea they mention of a continuum of services.
A continuum, meaning like a range of options.
Exactly. Not just one path. It covers everything from, the standard general education class to special ed classes, non-public schools, even home or hospital instruction, state special schools, the whole gamut.
So it's tailored.
The idea is that you need that range to meet the really diverse needs of students with disabilities, or SWDs as the briefing calls them.
Gotcha. Now, the briefing also mentions the bargained impact of these services. What's that about? It sounds contractual.
It is, essentially. It's highlighting that the practical side of things, like how big the classes are or how much planning time teachers get together, these aren't just set in stone. They need to be negotiated.
So it's about resources and working conditions for the teachers providing the support.
Precisely. It emphasizes that giving effective support means educators need manageable workloads and, crucially, that dedicated time for planning. It's part of the negotiation between the union and the district.
Okay. And collaboration comes up, too, between different types of teachers?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Collaboration between general ed and special ed teachers is presented as, fundamental for making services better and reaching more kids effectively.
Makes sense.
And it also really pushes the idea that decisions about a student's education, they have to be made individually, not a blanket policy. It requires input from various professionals.
And there's a call for funding in there, too, right, for IDEA.
A big one. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. The briefing is clear. Consistent full funding is vital. Local, state, federal, all levels.
Because the needs keep growing.
Seems so. They specifically mention that Congress needs to step up and meet its commitment to cover 40% of the costs associated with IDA. It's a significant financial piece.
Okay, so that's the policy angle. Then we have this other article that shifts gears a bit, focusing on how educators actually talk about SEN with parents, more personal.
Right. This one gets into the human element. How do you have those sometimes difficult conversations? It offers a framework, HELP.
HELP. Okay, what does that stand for?
Honesty, empathy, language, preparation, and support.
All right, let's break that down. Honesty sounds simple, but I bet it's tricky.
It can be. It's about being direct about strengths, yes, but also weaknesses. But crucially, the article warns against, making armchair diagnoses.
So don't guess at labels.
Exactly. Suggest a proper professional assessment if there are concerns, but don't speculate yourself.
Okay, empathy, that seems absolutely key here. Seeing it from the parent side.
Totally. It means explaining the school's view clearly, sure, but also really listening to what parents see at home, their insights. They know their child best in many ways.
Right, their perspective is invaluable.
Absolutely. And this whole framework really, it pushes towards collaboration, not just focusing on deficits.
And language. Avoid jargon, I assume?
You got it. Keep it plain, keep it simple. The goal is understanding, making parents feel like partners, not like they're being lectured with technical terms.
Preparation, that must make a world of difference. Walking in with specifics.
Huge difference. Like bringing actual work samples, notes on observations over time, maybe screener results. But you have to be able to explain what those results mean. Concrete examples help illustrate the points.
Makes sense. And the last one, support. That covers the what next.
Pretty much. Explaining what the school can do, maybe introducing the idea of an IEP, talking about how parents can help at home, And importantly, offering emotional support too.
It really frames it as a team effort.
Teacher, parents, learner, all working together. That's the ideal.
Okay, so that brings us to our third source, which takes a step back and looks at SEN, special educational needs, as a concept itself. Where did it even come from?
Yeah, this one gives us some history. It points back to the Warnock Report in the UK back in 1978. That was quite influential.
What did it say?
Well, one of the big things was its estimate that actually a lot of kids, maybe up to 20%, might have some kind of special educational need during their schooling. That was a pretty eye-opening figure at the time.
Wow, 1 in 5 potentially. And then legislation firmed things up.
Right. The source mentions the UK's Education Act of 1996, which gave a formal legal definition. Basically, a child has SEN. If they have a learning difficulty, that means they need special educational provision.
And how did it define learning difficulty?
It laid out a few criteria:
Mhm.
having significantly more trouble learning than most kids the same age, or having a disability that stops or hinders them from using the usual school facilities.
Okay.
And it also explicitly included kids under school age who would fit those criteria if they were older.
Interesting that it separates the idea of a learning difficulty needing specific teaching changes from a disability that might not require that.
Yes, it's an important distinction. It cautions against assumptions. Just having a disability doesn't automatically mean you need different teaching methods across the board.
And the source touches on the potential negative side of labels, too.
It does. It raises concerns that labeling can sometimes, unfortunately, lead to lower expectations from teachers or affect how students see themselves, maybe even leading to underachievement.
That's a serious consideration.
And there's also a point attributed to Bailey back in '98 that the term SEN itself can sometimes become linked with the idea of separate places or services.
Oh, implying they're othered somehow.
Potentially, yeah. It can unintentionally shift the focus away from recognizing individual learning styles and strengths, focusing more on the difficulty.
The power of teacher expectations is mentioned again, too. How their beliefs, maybe based on past experiences or stereotypes, can impact students with SEN.
It's a recurring theme, that awareness. The source also notes that the kinds of needs seen in schools might be changing, possibly more complex needs appearing in mainstream classrooms.
Why is that?
Well, it suggests a couple of factors: advances in medical care, particularly obstetrics, meaning more children with complex conditions survive, and maybe also just better identification of specific disorders.
So teachers need even more strategies now.
Exactly. It highlights the push for inclusive education and the need for teachers to constantly build their toolkit, learn diverse strategies.
And this conceptual piece wraps up by emphasizing that good teaching means continuous learning, reflecting on your practice, and really trying to understand each student, moving beyond just the label. It mentions the Every Child Matters agenda, too.
Right, from 2003. That broadened the perspective significantly. It wasn't just about academic learning or deficits.
What did it include?
It had 5 main goals: be healthy, stay safe, enjoy and achieve, make a positive contribution, and achieve economic well-being. Much more holistic, focusing on the whole child.
A really different way of looking at student needs compared to just focusing on learning difficulties.
Definitely a shift in perspective.
Okay, now prepare for a sharp turn, because our next source uses SEN in a completely different way. SEN Sound, a sound design studio.
Yeah, it's quite a jump, but still, interestingly, focused on human experience, just in a totally different domain.
Healthcare environments, right.
Exactly. And their philosophy is fascinating. Design is caregiving, and sound is symbolic.
Sound is symbolic in a hospital setting. What does that mean practically? How do they apply that?
They give this really compelling example involving operating rooms. They redesigned the alarm tones from medical equipment.
Okay.
And the result was that the physicians felt less stressed, more focused, compared to the old sounds, which were apparently quite jarring.
Wow. So the actual sounds affected performance and well-being.
That's the finding, yeah. It shows how deliberate sound design can really make a difference in those high-stakes environments. It's not just background noise.
It sounds very thoughtful. Their approach involves, what, human-centered design, audio expertise.
And participatory research. They actually work with caregivers in the process.
So they're not just designing sounds in a vacuum.
No, they're trying to understand the real-world impact. Their work includes designing sonic interfaces, those beeps, alarms, notifications, but also doing broader research, like user studies and audiological analysis of healthcare spaces.
And the people behind it, Yoko Sen and Avery Sen, They bring a different backgrounds, music, sound art, social research.
Right, it's that blend of art, science, and understanding human behavior applied to sound in a specific critical context.
And they use that Florence Nightingale quote.
Unnecessary noise is the cruelest absence of care. Yeah, that really sums up their mission perfectly, doesn't it? Creating more caring, less stressful sound environments.
Okay, so from special education needs to therapeutic sound design. And now for our final source, SEN means space.
Yep, another complete pivot. SEN, the company this time, is all about space video streaming.
Space video streaming, what's the goal there?
A pretty big one. To democratize space using video. They want to use it to inform, educate, inspire, benefit all humanity, as they put it.
That's ambitious.
Their mission is literally to stream real-time video from space to billions of people.
And they've launched something recently.
They have. A new 4K ultra-high-definition live stream of Earth and space.
Wow, 4K from space. Where can people see this?
It's apparently freely available, sen.com, mobile apps, YouTube. They're aiming for wide accessibility.
How are they getting the video?
They have their own camera system called Space TV 1 installed on the International Space Station.
On the ISS.
Yeah, and it provides different views, like a panorama of the Earth's horizon, a view looking straight down, and even one showing the station's docking port. Plus, they have their own satellite already and plan to launch more.
So it could be used for things like environmental monitoring, maybe? Besides just the inspiration factor.
That seems to be part of the vision, yeah. Providing that real-time global perspective. The founder, Charles Black, really emphasizes that it's meant for all humanity.
It's just fascinating. The same three letters, SEN.
It really is.
So, recapping. Special educational needs, supporting learners. SEN Sound, designing caring soundscapes in healthcare. And SEN, the company, streaming live views from space.
Three completely different concepts, different missions, all under the same banner, so to speak.
It really drives home how much context matters, doesn't it? How we interpret even simple acronyms or names.
Absolutely. And yet, you could argue there's a thread, maybe.
Yeah.
Each one, in its own way, is trying to address a need or an aspiration, supporting people, improving environments, expanding horizons.
That's a nice way to put it. Which leaves us with a final thought, I guess. How much does that initial context, the first time we hear an acronym like SEN, shape our entire perception of it? In a world that uses so many abbreviations, what happens when they have such wildly different meanings? Does it lead to confusion, or does it just highlight how specific we need to be? Something to ponder.
Definitely food for thought. Context is everything.
Indeed it is. Thanks for diving deep with us today.